Peace and blessings, family. Can any of all of you hear me? If you can hear me, put a comment so I can see some reactions, so I can see what everyone is up to. Warm welcome to everyone here. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Sonia, Renee Foreman. Beautiful. Thank you for your participation. Could you Nature Man, you also here. Fantastic. Sonia is here. Oh, Mickey Lee, you were there right from the off. Blessings. My computer is having a few problems today, so I've had to jump on Verona's. Yes, hello Victoria. So without much further ado, because we will have a bit of a extended conversation after today's presentation. So without much further ado, let's get into the presentation for today, and then after we can have a conversation afterwards. See you on the other side. Welcome to the final installment of our seminar talks for this Black History Month 2023. UK edition. This final video looks at a socio-developmental case. We explore how we can use our African spiritual corpus to heal ourselves of generational trauma and rediscover our talents to make ourselves valuable contributors once again to the forward movement of the human race. Sit back, enjoy, and be amazed at what we all have to tap into. Once again, give thanks for your time, peace, and blessings. Ashe. African spirituality, a socio-developmental case. The image on our screen now is an image taken of a sculpture made by a Ghanaian artist that a friend of mine shared on social media. He was very incensed at the image that he'd seen and wondered why an artist would feel comfortable representing themselves in this manner. Because as we can see from the image, it's a very well-known religious image. It has history from the British Empire to even the Russian flag. And it's the image of a supposed angel that is killing the devil. Okay. What is interesting about the way that this Ghanaian artist, himself black, what is most striking and most interesting about this image is how the artist feels no way whatsoever in representing themselves as the image that is below. They feel totally comfortable with the representation, or rather the misrepresentation, that the devil is supposedly a dark-skinned or African person, whereas the angel that is supposedly the good entity or the good force in this dynamic is a European, light as anything can be. And it's interesting how this whole image itself even reflects the first edict of the Pope given to the first Portuguese murderers, also known as explorers, who went around the globe apparently discovering new lands while removing the original inhabitants of those lands from their lands. This speaks to a very, very low self-esteem for one to feel absolutely no emotion whatsoever to depict themselves in such a manner. But why would somebody do this? Right? Now, in this clip that I'm about to show you, let's have a listen to this is a incident that went viral some years ago of an American evangelist in Africa. I want you to listen very carefully, though, to what this man thinks of himself and what he's associated with in comparison to where or how the Ghanaian artists view themselves in order to represent themselves in the sculpture. Let's observe the vast difference in self-perception.
Security, hello, KK. KK.
Come here. You hate Jesus? You hate yourself? You hate Jesus? You hate yourself? You hate me? No. You obey what I say. I don't obey you. You understand? Open my fucking room now. You understand? Bitch. Nigger bitch. Look at me. Look at Christ who died for you. Look at me. Look at Christ who died for you. Look at Christ. No.
Excuse.
No excuse. No excuse.
No excuse.
No.
Excuse.
Jesus is tired.
Yes.
Jesus is tired of your goddamn disobedience.
Yes, but
Feel me.
Now, don't you find it interesting that this European, aka white person, seems to associate himself with this idea or image of Jesus? And why should that not be the case? Because when we look at the first iconographic representations, we find him to be drawn as a European. So why wouldn't psychologically this European also make this direct connection with being this holy figure? And then also as a consequence, or rather in the same vein, why do we now not see this African sculptor feeling totally comfortable with also representing themselves in this negative manner? Why would this not be so? Because for millennia now, there's so many different facets and ways in which the concept of whiteness, also being European, because these two things are very synonymous, is associated with all things which are apparently good and pure, without sin, or civilized or superior, even though the evidence doesn't reflect the same. But these are the propagandized ideas, if you will. Whereas things which are quote unquote black or of an African source has been codified as being bad, impure, the very epitome of sin, whatever that may be, very primitive, in this case meaning backward, not original, like primal, and then being inferior. Okay, these ideas have been fed. These ideas have been fed so deeply into the body politic that psychologically we start to act out these things often without even realizing it. Okay, so the results or the effects are that Western civilization's ideals, way of life, are viewed as the standard to emulate, whereas African and other indigenous cultures viewed as less than, with no contributions to human progress or achievements. So when we see these two examples that I've given you in terms of a developmental psyche, you can see who will always come out on top. Because one person is being programmed to believe the very best of themselves, while another has been strategically put at the bottom of the pile. Who do you think would come to the top in such a power dynamic? And as history shows us, it's clearly the European, aka the white person. Because by feeding the world this bevy of misinformation and falsehoods, it has ultimately led to some people willingly taking on board these false representations of themselves. So as we can see with the evangelist, he clearly feels that he is much better. He feels that the Africans should even worship him. Why? Because his self-image and that of the image that has been propagated as the quote-unquote savior of the world can be interchanged somewhat. So they benefit from the power of association. I mean, this image is so powerful that even when you try to contend with the idea of a quote unquote black Jesus, some African or black people will consider that very idea blasphemous. Yeah, not that I believe in either or of the images, because if we look at it from an African cosmological perspective, then everybody is a Jesus. Forget that. We don't even, we are not Jesus, because Jesus exists as a, if you want to call it, a lower level than the concept of God itself, by our very oris, yes, by our ashe, by our sum, yeah, by our spirits in the African cosmological system. We are all elemental forces. So we are all Jesuses. We are all extensions from the manifested source. Yeah. So that concept will not fly. There are no special people other than others in our ancestral ways. We all just have to work towards the realization and manifestation of our inherent power. So yeah, the idea of any blasphemy totally irrelevant here. We can further see this mental disease at play even stronger. And I'll take you back a few years when there was a proposal in South Africa to celebrate an Ancestors Day. And I want you to observe the response of not just the so-called white African community, but also the black Christians.
Castle Milk Stout is partnering with renowned cultural activist and poet laureate Zolani Mkiva and the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Controlesa, to officially launch Ancestors Day on the 8th of May. Controlesa is calling on South Africans to celebrate and observe African spirituality and its role in our lives through ceremonies and rituals that honor the ancestors.
Didn't play the whole clip, I just gave you a little piece of it so that you could get an idea. But let me show you what is going on. All right? Satan is trying to get a grip on our nation.
Now, when you listen to the white man speaking, can you notice something very interesting with his constant reference to African ancestors and African cultures being demonic and satanic? And you know, it makes me always wonder when other black people who are in these congregations with them think. Because if they think your ancestors and your whole way of life that brought you to where you are now is evil, what makes you think they would think that you are somehow exempt from this evil too? Clearly, you're a descendant of that evil. So that evil will always be with you. You will never receive that respect that you seek to emulate. And then sadly, let's look at what some of the Christian organizations, black Christian organizations in South Africa, responded to the call for Ancestors Day. They categorically call for rejection of it. Can you see? It's right on your screen. There's some Africans who are totally and fully gone. And as you can see, this is why the first video to start off the seminar series calls for that political and legal representation. Because if we do not do so, such organizations that have these political powers at their disposal will find ways in which to legitimize religious intolerance and hatred and carry on the persecution unabated. This idea of intolerance cannot work in any so-called space, particularly that calls itself a democratic space. South Africa is apparently so welcoming that it calls itself the Rainbow Nation. But yet, it is here, right in front of us, trying to reject a day to commemorate the ancestors who were the first custodians of that land. Yet South Africa, like every other day, will have a day to celebrate veterans from wars, veterans from the old Boers who were racist, killing off the South Africans, as we know in South African apartheid. Even they have days where they remember some of these violent, vicious people. But you have South African Christian communities rejecting a day to venerate their own ancestors. So hopefully by this point of this seminar series, it should become clear to you just how deep this issue is. If you thought it was a light issue, and you know, as I said, I know many people in the West, because you can go to your local parks, you can go to your local rivers, you can perform your libations, your other practices freely, knowing that no one will come to attack you, even though at a governmental level it's not recognized. In some places, this isn't even possible. This is where, in the spirit of Ubuntu, you look further beyond your space, because it's not just about you. Let's carry on. Here we have an African American Christian pastor. He came onto my feed, so to speak, during the Black Lives Matter issue. And disgustingly, this, I believe his name is Mark Major, was actively advocating against the objective of what Black Lives Matter was about. Forget the fact that there may have been some other discrepancies which came up about what the whole movement, or rather some people in the movement, were using its funds for, as an idea to promote racial and social justice. It's more than a worthwhile ideal. Its execution, we can consider a different matter. This pastor was actually advocating that the unrest that has resulted as a result of people protesting for simple human rights was somehow demonic and had been spurred on by African spiritual entities. So he has a whole page where he has all these misinformed opinions about what was causing Black Lives Matter, as if trying to fight for justice is something not worthy of celebration. Then he misinforms about how violence in the Black community is caused by particular elemental forces, even though the basic simple logic, you see, this is how you can tell people, they can't even put basic 1 and 2 together. He was claiming that most of the violence in Black communities is because of our elemental forces, our orishas, our bosom. But the fact is, for at least the last 300 years or the last 3 centuries, most African Americans have been largely practicing Christianity. So if we're going to look for a factor of why there might be dysfunction or violence in these communities, clearly, why would you blame something that a majority of them don't even have any working memory of, but right now have total fear and disdain for? How can something you don't practice be the cause of any form of dysfunction? But this man was given a platform and he was making a lot of noise about it. This is scapegoating, and it shows the depth of ignorance and hatred. This is hate speech. You would never be able to see a pastor speak so freely in public about Islam, about Judaism, these days even about Hinduism or Sikhism, but yet is allowed to be done fully and freely against African spiritual traditions. Why? Because like the first video says, we have no legal or political power. Yeah. So how is this man's negative and ignorant perception of himself and his traditions any different to the way the continental African depicted himself at the bottom of the feet of this so-called white angel? Same vein of thinking. And it's interesting, we can go as far back as 2010. If you remember this hateful preacher, Pat Robinson, who's now gladly not with us anymore, who was claiming that, again, the Haitian revolution was due to a result of Africans signing a pact with the devil, Let's not forget the devil that doesn't exist in African spirituality. But what I found most interesting about his comments is, again, some of the thinking we see in even this a Black American pastors, we see in this African American pastor's diatribe, rubbish that he wrote about Ogun and violence in the community, which is they totally ignore the issue of violence and mistreatment about Black people. To a degree, they actually almost justify it by saying that it's because you're not in the Jesus camp. But meanwhile, your religion, especially all the three Abrahamics, claim to be about love. So on Pat Robinson's pact, he would describe, he says, because they were being mistreated by the French. He had the word mistreated, So mistreated, almost like enslaved Africans were just getting smacks around the head for not going to do work which they never got paid for centuries. Yeah. So they actually justify the violence against Black people with a cry to, oh, if you were a Christian, none of that would be happening anyway. The logic is so beyond ignorant. But this is where we are. So, what developmental promise does African spirituality hold for its adherents? Well, most importantly, healing generational trauma we all carry due to recent history and institutionalization of racism and Afrophobia, which is hating all things of an African source. The other thing is rediscovering aspects of ourselves and culture that facilitates productivity, creativity, and our ancestral talents held within, which come out over various stages of our lives. The third thing is for our mental and physical well-being that will result as a consequence of us engaging with our ancestral modalities. There's a raised sense of esteem, of potential, and the cultural power and possibilities. So what do these three things mean? A person cannot function at full potential when they're being held down and limited by wrong views of themselves. They cannot even see which aspect of themselves they can draw power from. Okay, so once we're able to heal that trauma, we've then set ourselves to point B, which is it gives us scope to show us which aspects again we can draw from to pull out all the positives that's in there. And this was covered in part 2, the socio-economic case, where we looked at our ability to use our corpus as a great source of wealth and value. And for our physical and mental well-being, you can't be in a state of great production if you're in a state of low self-esteem. So the opposite is true. Once we are in touch with who we truly are, what we know we are capable of doing, it will only lead to even more production and greatness. So this is what we need to do. The first step is to work with the practices so we can heal the psychic white juju that has been imprinted and continues to be imprinted in many minds and prevents us from discovering our full self, because an essential aspect of our culture is hidden or limited from our consciousness. Right? So once we're able to get back in touch with that aspect of ourselves, it will allow us to then find those parts of ourselves that we didn't or weren't aware of before, so that we start using it as our fuel to create, to bring our God consciousness, our God practices forward, and we come into the full power as creators of our own realities. Okay, and once we're in that state, freely flowing, freely creating, we see that our share, our energy just keeps expanding, and our sense of self and what we do start to expand as well. Yes, it is like a self-fueling dynamic of energy. That is what our share, that is what our sum. Yes, that is what our spirits are designed to do. Now we look at where we can draw from our ancestral modalities to bring even more value into our lives. And one of the most promising and inspiring people who so fits this call I've been making for so many years is this young scientist from Kano, modern day Nigeria. Her name is Mansura Abdulaziz. Now, what I love about this young lady is she's actually made great breakthroughs on using a plant known to many black people called soursop. Yep, it's a soursop is a plant that is claimed to have many anti-carcinogenic properties. It became a big deal where a lot of Western pharmaceutical companies and even mentions on just social media will get posts and accounts taken down quite rapidly. However, this young lady who is a molecular biologist from Bayero University managed to develop an anti-cancer drug from this African plant. Her research is so poignant and so revealing that she was sponsored by a university in Spain to carry on the research. But what I love most importantly about how she went about her discoveries is a particular modality I talk about in my presentation, Memories of Potential, that we need when we look into our ancestral corpus, we'll find all the tools needed to further our production. Because look, according to this young lady, her inspiration wasn't Einstein or Marie Curie or any of these other Europeans that we are schooled to emulate far away in Europe, used as the standard for everything else. Rather, this young scientist looked closer to home. In the same space, many will be calling juju or obia, black magic. She looked to the spiritual corpus to look at how healers use the plants. And this is what inspired her to carry on that research. And she's already making breakthroughs. So, in her own words, it is well documented that these plants have an enormous, largely unstudied anti-cancer potential. Research into herbs such as Guelera senegalensis, which is used by traditional African healers and known as Sabara by locals, has led to the discovery of several anti-cancer drugs. Now, let me ask you a question. Why do you think she says they are largely unstudied? Why are they unstudied? You know why, and I know why. Because according to the colonial doctrine, nothing in Africa or Africans themselves or melanated people across the world, apparently we have nothing to offer, no? We're just, as I already said at the beginning of the presentation, primitive, not meaning primal, but backward. Yeah, so nobody seems to have bothered to even take on board what African healers are doing. Because apparently they're superstitious people who just are fraudsters, aren't they? But this Western educated scientist decided to be inspired by her lineage. She gave her traditions respect. And in doing so, she's already leading in her field. Yeah, she's discovered things that for the last 200 years or so, many people haven't found. One of the most debilitating forms of illness that we now find commonly today, which is a whole range of different cancers. But these plants are growing in many African backyards and people can't even access it because they're busy trying to pop pills from an institution which has left their traditions understudied. So who's losing out here? Can you see? This is what the whole seminar talk has been about. And I'll repeat that point as nice and simple as I can. When we engage with the ancestral corpus, we will all be more. I've given many examples throughout the previous seminars, and here we have the perfect example. And our lovely sister here, Mansura Abdulaziz, has proven it already. It is the local Babalawo who gave her the inspiration to discover all these new anti-cancer drugs. And it's funny, again, as I said, you can see the same colonial struggle because modern pharmaceutical companies have been fighting actively against anybody trying to put soursop as a relevant remedy. But because she's now using a Western modality to prove it, you cannot discount it. Okay? But as much as I love the sister and I love what she's doing, you see, the important question I also eventually ask is, because she's being funded by a Spanish university, right? Who will own the patents for her findings and any medicines that she makes? Her name will disappear off the record because it will be replaced by either the Spanish university or whichever private person is funding that research. And can you think of the billions of money they will make from the cancer treatments that this young lady will develop? Now let's think of all the billionaires that we know in Nigeria, mainly from the oil wealth. Pharmacology, think of all the big pharmaceutical companies in the world. Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, Unilever, in some respects. Pharmacology is a way more lucrative business than even oil. So why did a Spanish university need to come and fund this young lady rather than one of these billionaires busy flashing their gold-plated houses across the skyline of Nigeria and all the rest of it? But you have, if it's really, because it's clearly wealth some of these people are after, what her research promises will bring way more wealth than anybody can imagine. And a European family proved this to us already. Remember, Johnson & Johnson, the company we call Johnson & Johnson now, multi-billion global conglomerate. Its origin lies in an enslaved African teaching one of their early ancestors a vaccination method against a smallpox outbreak that happened in Boston, Massachusetts in 1716. Okay, if you want that fact checked again, you can watch my presentation, Memories of Potential, which is what I presented at the ASCAS conference. Okay, so it's very interesting. This tradition of us contributing to modern medicine is way longer than even this young lady here. We have a lot of value in our traditions that we haven't even started to untap yet. Okay, so least we forget our esteemed ancestor Malidoma Some and his cultural modality for curing mental health issues in his Dagara tradition. Honor to the memories of Malidoma Some and his wife Sobonfu Some, beautiful souls who came to enrich the world with the healing arts of the Dagara people. He helped a man who was schizophrenic, what we will call in Western terms, somebody who was a lunatic who had gone mad. He managed to resolve most of his mental health issues without any electric shocks to the brain or other medications that would lead to unintended consequences. So why are these methods not being looked into? I'll tell you why. Because once some of these methods can be adopted into our mainstream body politic, that means they've accepted that the African systems also have value. And this is what some people cannot take. They still want to continue to perpetuate this idea that Africans are some type of animals and have no value. So once they allow all these modalities, which they know have, in most cases, more value than just the let's dope you up, pill you up, because the systems are designed to really heal you, not to turn you into an addict to be stuck on a healing wheel which never ends. That's why we don't see these traditions exhibited and put in the right spaces, because it looks for actual resolutions, not temporary addiction points. These healing ways of our ancestors are essential to our well-being in this day and age. And we cannot fully heal unless we embrace at least some aspects of it. Okay? The most eye-opening case study that I've come across in my readings and research today was something that happened with what has proved most enlightening are some case studies about how healing modalities were delivered to victims of the Rwandan genocide by using methods that were totally non-Western. Interestingly enough, when they had tried to use the Western methods like CBT and other modalities, the Africans weren't responding. It wasn't helping them with their trauma. But when they introduced certain cultural music, certain cultural ceremonies, certain drums, got people to engage at a cultural level, what happened was the healing started to engage. What happened was they started to engage with the healing. They started to heal their trauma. So even the healing process had an ancestral modality to it. We need to make space for our traditions. Understanding how various aspects of our ancestral cultural practices are critical for our well-being is essential for a good quality of life. Yeah. And it can be some very simple things that we take for granted or call secular in this day and age, like singing and dancing. And being able to access that part will require us to study. To know these systems, we need to go back and study them. And when we study them, we need to share them with others or put them in spaces that others can also access. Okay, so those especially who are intrigued by the power within the music and the sound and the dancing and that case study that was carried out for the victims of the Rwandan genocide, you can watch our presentation, The Spirituality of the West African Kingdoms. Okay, because there you start to see how these aspects of our culture are closely related to how we rediscover our quote-unquote God consciousness or becoming godlike, or rather realizing our creative powers. So in closing, let's remind ourselves, what value does African spirituality hold for us? It is a rich corpus of knowledge that can cover a range of social, health, and developmental needs. It is a deep well of principles that can inform philosophical, ethical, and moral dilemmas which are faced by humanity. It gives us access to systems of healing generational traumas and transforming our current realities and living our full potential. It has many concepts that can inspire and drive creative ideas for problem solving. There is knowledge within it and practices that can facilitate better understanding of our ecosystems and relations with nature. All of these points have been covered across all three presentations that we have covered so far. From here, what's next? I will suggest you watch all three seminar series if you have not already. And most importantly, carry out the suggested actions for political recognition and legal affordances to African spirituality. So please, that is in the first presentation. Sign the Oshun petition on change.org to set the legal precedent so we can get African spiritual corpuses into the body politic. So go to change.org, search for List Oshun's Festival as part of UK celebrated religious festivals. Please support the research and ongoing work here at Ancestral Voices via any personal donations. No amount is too small or too big at ancestralvoices.co.uk. The button to donate is at the bottom of the first page of the website. Okay, this research, this lobbying, all of this takes time. This is time that is not paid for, and as much as we love holding a space for our traditions, because of the well-being it brings to us, we also live in a society that has certain financial demands and obligations on anyone within it. So this will also help us so that we can budget time, we can apportion the right time, and we're able to work in support of our traditions without being stuck on the plantation all day, quote unquote, without access to work on ourselves. So help us, or rather support us, to also support you with the knowledge sharing. Okay? Then we exist in a nice reciprocal relationship. Share the seminar series to others, put it into your discussion groups, see what outcomes can come out from there, and just start making contacts internationally for a common purpose useful to us all. So I thank you for your appreciation of this series, and I look forward to where we can go further with this work. Thank you all for your support over the years and your ongoing support. And I look forward to us being able to do some great work in honor of the ancestors. Ashe. Peace, family. How we all getting on? I hope you enjoyed the presentation. How did we all find it? We have 10 minutes for questions, comments, thoughts, appreciations. We love them all, you know. At least show that we have. Let's take that off. Ruthie Oaks, it's been a while. Good to see you. Well, I haven't been on any lives myself for quite a while, so but good to see you, Ruthie, and all the dedicated support fan base, Nature Man. Who else can I call out? Mickey Lee. You know, everyone on the call, really. Thank you. Yeah, yes, okay. Shout out to government funded Mampong Herbal Hospital in Ghana. Okay, that's excellent to hear, so bad. Hopefully you can send us an email so I can have your contact. So when I'm in Ghana, I can check that out. I haven't heard that as yet. Okay, Plan Muti. All right, fantastic. I'll be checking that out. Family, we're getting good suggestions here. You know, if you're familiar with the work Ancestral Voices, then you know, as part of our ancestral corpus, nature is really our greatest mother. You know, all the provisions we need is there for us. You know, give thanks for that. Faye Abdullah, I appreciate you as well. You know, thank you for your continued presence with us and support. We definitely appreciate you, you know. So yeah, I'll also just, you know, bring down to a few things. Today is the last day of Black History Month in the UK. You know, we know that for some years, a Black History Month, the whole concept started getting a lot of slack. That it primarily focused on, or rather, made Black history seem like a very tiny focus. And every year there will be the same individuals who will be repeated, and it will fall down to either Omowale Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. You know, the Black history became, in a sense, almost too African American struggle for rights. And our history goes way beyond that. What's great though is over the years, we now start to see, we discuss things such as the Benin bronzes, we discuss things as the return of African kings and queen mothers who fought valiantly against European oppression. And then for some reason, their bodies were taken away. If you've read European history long enough to know, and this is some of these are in the open domain, you find that the bodies of some of our ancestors from as far back as ancient Kemet were being actively eaten by some of the top intelligentsia of Europe, because there's that, and or they had the understanding that by ingesting the bodies of these Asian Africans, they could also access something to do with their source, something to do with their power, you know. And then we don't even have to go that far back into those early 16th, 15th centuries to know this fascination with perhaps eating Africans physically or even symbolically, you know, what we call the avant-garde art movement of Europe. You know, people like the Picassos, the Salvador Dali's. If you read what they were doing on certain evenings, they will go into certain bars and, you know, socialization places. They will put they will put masks or symbols that made them look like they were in an African ceremony, right? They would play drums and they would try and chant and try and gesture. Yeah, now there were no, as far as my reading and research has shown, no official priest, or none of them were even for public knowledge initiated into any African traditions. But guess what happened? They created a new art movement that they call it Cubism. They call it what's in Cubism as well? My memory is trying. Yes, the Dada. It's not just Dada includes. Thank you very much. Help me out here. We have Dada. Dada includes things like Futurism, Cubism, which is why you see that with all these art forms, right? They break them into very simple geometric shapes. When you look at African sculpture, what do you see? We look at the fundamental, the essence of things, and perhaps I came into this knowledge early because I'm a design student, and one of the things I did was redesign history, and that was one of the things that struck me, because after reading that and looking at the mask and some of these artworks, I was like, oh wait, hold on a minute, you can see the African influence right there. There was also aspects of from the Asia continent. Yeah, I nearly said Oriental there. Apparently, that's not a very endearing word. So the point I was going to make, or coming down, sorry for the long walk, was coming back to the importance of Black History Month. Because the founder of it reminds us, and I always mix up his name. It's not George Washington Carver. It's the miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Woodson. Yes, what he makes it very, because he is the one that puts it out as an initiative, and he says that this, keeping that month or that week as it started out, was the most important thing to ever happen since the whole civil rights movement, because he understood the importance and power of knowledge dissemination. He was an educator himself, so he understood how people's minds are shaped by the type of stuff that it is fed, and to make space to put back in some of your ancestral memory was more than key. And today we know why, don't we? Because our latest scientific advances, which goes into things like neuro-linguistic programming or epigenetics, yeah, rely heavily on your ancestral lineage. Yeah, it doesn't rely on any, should we say, only synthesized compounds in a lab. It's largely even effective based on your ancestral lineage. Okay, so everything that our corpus has always represented for time, we see it coming back. So whether the ancestor Carter G. Woodson knew that it went at that fundamental level, that knowledge existed in an ancestral form within the depth of our DNA or not, at least he understood the process of the mind in accumulating knowledge and how that knowledge then transform our behavior patterns. Yeah. So as we can also see, even over the years and after the many outcries, now what we call Black History Month embodies the global Black experience. Yeah, from ancient civil rights struggle, and even the issues that we have of today, in our current experience now. So yes, I guess my conclusion will be any Black History Month will only be as useful as what we choose to focus on and choose to do with. Thank you, Mickey Lee. True blessing, true blessing. Yes. Here in USA, when a person passes via car accident, they set up a memorial, yes, on the side of the road for them. They have flowers, candles, etc. But that's honoring our ancestors is wrong. Very ironic. Indeed, Mickey Lee. It can either be ironic or a very clever way of making you release what will also sustain you, while the other expands, not necessarily at your expense, but more at your ignorance, because they've let you do something, or rather they've made you not do something that you were supposed to do, even as you watch them do it. And it's interesting you said that, right? Because I was having a conversation with Verona earlier today, and I'm putting out my next meme. But the idea was, I was going to create this image that says, because I was raised Catholic, and one of the core themes in Christianity, period, not just the Catholic sect, is because it's in the Bible. I've forgotten which verse. Honor your father and your mother. Who's your father and your mother? That's your ancestors, because dear fathers and dear mothers also extend to your father and your mother. So if we as African/Black people globally are now saying that even having honor for your ancestors is wrong, then you're contradicting what the Bible advises you to do, no? I believe it's actually a commandment. Oh, yes, it is. You see, my Christian education has gone down some. Excellent, because my ancestral education has gone higher. So we're having a balance of possibilities there. So family, yes, Lana, you also learned that in art school, didn't you? Yep, I know. Dada art movement, futurism. So my question to you all, on what are you going to create? What are you going to create to extend our ancestral memories? Because as we do so, we extend our ancestors through ourselves, because at the core we are the extension of our ancestors. What we're going to teach our children to create, to honor our traditions. Yeah, the world really is our oyster. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I'll give you some advanced, I guess, ideas as well. This series or seminar started off from a presentation I did for an organization called AUDM, and we're looking at the concept of creating liberated spaces. Because when you look into our experience, particularly in the diaspora during the times of enslavement, the picture painted is that all quote unquote melanated people everywhere were under threat, or rather were enslaved or facing the brutality of it. But no, there were very autonomous spaces, some like Haiti, which became a country. And even beyond Haiti, they are even more inspiring, more, should we say, equally inspiring spaces that are not IT, and many still that exist to today, and so from that concept of that research is what inspired this 3-part series to make the case for ancestral modalities. So please, if you haven't, very important, go to the Oshun petition on change.org. Please sign it, email it on. That petition is in a very early infancy, but it will be successful. So let's take our steps and also build, because our ancestors weren't overridden in a day either, even in a generation. It took some millennia for certain seeds of division to be sown to the degree that we could start acting in such detrimental manner to our very selves. Yeah. So family, I have about 5 minutes. I'm going to leave you off with a video that I saw today. Nothing works in isolation. So I came across, yes, Faye, thank you. Nothing works in isolation. Huh? And as I finished this video presentation today, someone sent me a video that really touched my heart, because it reminded me, even as a child growing up in Ghana, because certain things you think you could have said, or you would never even attempt to say, because of a certain hold of the colonial lock in the mind. So this young man inspired me a lot, just as a Nigerian molecular scientist has in the presentation. So I will leave out with this video. I thank you all for your time, and I hope you've learned something useful, and that will then come and reflect back on us as well, and then we grow more. So enjoy the wisdom of this young, I would say, very well raised and balanced young man.
Piece of knowledge I know about myself and about this and about the tech I'm waiting for.
Who created you?
My mother. She gave birth to me.
No, Adupa, you didn't get my question very well. Who created you?
I believe through science, human beings were born, not created. And if human beings were created in the first place, I never got to see God as my father or God as my mother. The only person who cared for me is my mother. She buys my clothes, she buys my food, she pays my fees, she does everything. God doesn't do anything for me. And if I'm supposed to stand here and say he has done something for me, I'm supposed to ask. And I say he gave money to my mother. He never came and said my mother should collect the money that he's giving.
So you don't want to be a Christian?
No.
What do you want to be? So where do you fall? Where do you belong?
The traditional belongings.
So do you pour libation?
Yep, I do.
At your age, you pour libation?
Yes, I've done that before.
To who?
My ancestors.
Your ancestors. That is what you believe in?
Yes.
Do you believe in Jesus Christ? That he came to die for our sins? Do you believe that?
I don't actually think we died for any sins, or he died for sins. Because if he is the Almighty and he didn't want us to sin, he should have just made sin not exist. He could have made the word sin not exist. So why did you create sin in the first place if you don't want us to sin? It means you are setting up a trap for human beings to sin. It means you intentionally created hell as a hellhole for people to go in. And that doesn't make sense if you keep on thinking about it a million times. So I don't actually think he's almighty in a way, because if you're almighty, you could have not stopped sin. And now we are sinning, you are trying to forgive us for sinning. So if you are all forgiven, why don't you forgive us for sins? And when we're in hell, we don't have any way to talk to you. So how do you forgive us in the first place if we are there?
That is why whilst you are on this earth, you don't have to commit any sin so that you'll be thrown into the hellfire.
But why didn't he just stop sin if he doesn't like sin? Sin is not good because he doesn't sin. So why did he create sin? Automatically meaning that human beings created sin on our own. So we are powerful than him. Even if he created us, we are more powerful than him.
Do you believe in anointing?
Anointing? What's that? Like anointing oil or something?
Do you believe in deliverance? Do you know deliverance?
Giving birth?
No, deliverance. Somebody being prayed for and the person comes under the unction of the Holy Spirit and the person falls down. Do you believe in that?
No, I think it's fake.
You don't believe that one day a pastor will pray for you and you fall?
Oh no, it won't even work. If it works, it's not going to be the pastor's work. It will be the energies that are in that room. People are poor and they are praying 24/7, but they are not getting anything. There is no God. Find a job and stop bragging about God. Now God is, even if he's there, he's at his place doing something. It's looking for food.
Oh no.
If he cared so much, he'll make you successful. People never pray to God and they just got money out of a containment hole. People got money for working. I've never in my life heard that this man sat down and just kept on praying for 5 years and at the end of the day he got money. But you can hear that this guy worked hard and he got money. The people who pray and they have a job but it's still not going on.
So you don't believe in prayers?
I believe prayers work, but not to him. Because he himself, when we say a prayer to him, he doesn't use it. The prayer never comes to life. It's only when you yourself, you are doing it. If they say if you pass the exam, you get this, and you keep on praying, you are praying. And
you don't learn.
You won't get it. But if you don't even pray and you learn alone, you will go. So the praying itself is a distraction from you to achieve what you are. So God is doing, if he's there, he's trying to do it so no one can stand up to him. But no, there are people there who are in the 5D consciousness, who understand this.
Adipa, where do you believe after death? Where do we go to?
I believe we go where we want to go to.
Where we want to go to?
If you believe you go to heaven, you go to heaven. You have never seen anyone going to hell before. When a person dies, you don't see their ghost going up. For all you know, the ghost could still be here.
But the Bible says that it's appointed unto man.
But the Bible was written by man, so man could be lying.
Who told? You said the Bible was written by man.
Yes, or God wrote the Bible.
Adipa, I don't know, but the kind of things you are telling me today, I'm really sure.
It makes sense more than the things you heard by a pastor, don't they? Do they? Do they?
Do you have a Bible in your room? You don't have a Bible
I've never read one before.
in your life?
Nope.
Can you tell me any quotation in the Bible?
I don't know what a quotation is. Because I don't read it. Because it's just a waste of time. Because it's like you're having your phone and as you're watching someone's video, the person is getting more money. So as you're reading the Bible, the person is getting more belief off your mind. And then I'm not going to let someone feed on my brain just because they wrote a book.
And when you go to school, do you say the Lord's Prayer?
I came to school to learn. I didn't come to school for the Lord's Prayer.
You pour libation sometimes
Yes.
to your ancestors.
Yes. Can we get to the tech?
Okay. Well, definitely, this is going to be part 1. I'll be coming back again.
So this is we're done. This is part 1.
No, we are not done.
Okay, tech.
What do you know about technology?
Technology is the cutting edge of the world that helps you to assist. On the contrary, technology helps life to be more easier. If you want food, you can order. Tech makes everything more simpler.
Lovely family. So I hope this was a nice place to end off. We have young minds coming who are not going to be accepting the default, position of just believe and it will all be okay. You can't question anything. Why can't you even also question aspects of your own tradition? Especially sometimes where you might find yourself in a cultish space where there might be what's that thing? A personality. You find yourself in a space that's supposed to be honoring many energies, but you find one person trying to hold all the energies in that space, So sadly, to be human is the air. And yeah, you will find sometimes even in our space, some people get taken by their ego and sense of importance and forget that the very essence of our traditions is reciprocation, balance, Let's remember that simple cosmic principle. Mama Bayina teaches it so well. The most important thing that you do to keep you alive is free, and you also give it out freely. Is your breath. Yeah. For you to live, you need to be able to take it in, and you also need to be able to share some of it out. Yeah. That there, balance, equilibrium, harmony. Peace and blessings, everyone. I thank you all for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed this seminar series. Please go onto our website, write a review. Hopefully, if you watched all 3. If you haven't, watch all 3. Yeah, at the minute they're on our YouTube channel, but they'll be coming to our website soon. Blessings, guidance, upliftment, and most importantly, just be happy for being you. You're here. You're important. That's why you're here. And you don't need anybody to tell you that but yourself. Family, rise up every time. Peace.